Okay, good morning. It is 4:31 on the clock, and this episode is a part 2 of the last episode, which was Change Your Life in 6 Months. My name is Elijah, you can call me Lay. Since this episode wasn't supposed to happen, I figured it's okay to just kind of jump right into it. I usually do the segments, what am I grateful for, a card pull, good experience of the week, learning experience of the week. So the only one I'm actually skipping is the card pull. If you want to hear what that entails, listen to the last episode. But to start off with what I'm grateful for. So the first thing I am grateful for is that I got back into reading. I am on my 15th book of the year. And I didn't count the materials I've read for school, but the funny thing is, this wasn't actually my goal for the year to get back into reading. When me and my friend were discussing our goals for what we wanted in 2023, she was actually the one who said she had a very specific amount of books she wanted to read this year. And honestly, I wasn't personally thinking of that. Well, I was still in school, so it was when would I find the time to read outside of school and studying and grades and having to do all the senior things. Once I did get back into reading, it kind of felt like a full circle moment. It was accidental too, because I started to read again in February, and it was Twisted Love by Anna, and that was or Anna. I'm so bad at pronouncing her name, but that was the first fiction book I've read in a long time. Before that, I was kind of a nonfiction girly for a while, and I still am, and now I just balance between both of them. And it felt like such a full circle moment because, at least for me, growing up, I was always the kid who wanted books as a reward. I can honestly say I remember going to parent-teacher conferences and always wanting little books and journals and stationery at the table, because my only complaint was oh, I didn't talk much or participate in class enough. Also, I was a really shy kid. And I also remember loving book fairs, and since my mom works in a school, I just feel I've always taken advantage of that, and she would always sometimes if her school had a book fair, because I went to a different school where she worked, so she would for their book fair bring me back books and buy me books. I am absolutely obsessed and in love with the book I'm reading. So it's called Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. It's about 376 pages. It's a second chance romance, and I don't want to discuss a lot because I'm still kind of debating if I go back to YouTube, if that the type of content I want to make on YouTube. Because it's kind of weird for me, because it's I have so many platforms, and that part of me is should they be cohesive? Would it be too repetitive or whatever? But let me just say, it is literally the only book I gave 5 stars this year, because I am so picky when it comes to books. I know myself, I'm very picky, and I don't know, it's just I love this book, and I feel I will eventually go into why I love it, because if I start now, I'm not gonna stop with everything that makes it great. So we're gonna move on. And last time I skipped the good experience of the week and the learning experience of the week. So I'm just going to jump right into that, and then we'll get into the actual topic. My good experience of the week was getting to speak to people on Discord. So I was late to the meeting because I missed the last one because I fell asleep, and it was early in the morning, and I was still kind of fixing my sleep schedule. This time I was waiting up because this time the meeting was at in my time zone 9 p.m. and For everyone else, I think it was like in the afternoon, maybe, because we asked about time after, and the person who made the Discord is from Australia. So, because that person is a whole different time zone, it's been an adjustment, and the Discord is for people around the world. The funny thing is, a lot of the times, like, I suggest topics, and it was a topic I suggested, which was like accountability with goals, and I think networking was supposed to be a topic. So actually, they ended up talking for about 3 hours ish, I think. Like about 3 hours, but I was only there for like the last hour, to be honest. But it still felt refreshing talking to people because I'm naturally a homebody. But when I'm at home, I'm still like working on setting myself up for success. Like I plan, I draft and review content. I make promos for them, like for social media, and also try to keep up and updating my posting schedule, all while trying to do the things to set me up for a more traditional role. Because as much as I would love to have content creating as my full-time job, at a point in my life it's just not realistic for me. But I do still see it in the future as something I could eventually do full-time. But it's laying the seeds now and doing what I can now to improve my content, improve my organizational skills and stuff. And of course, my wellness practices, because my biggest goal of this year was my health. So I'm in this phase, but I also tend to forget to socialize because I'm home so much. And since on the other end, I don't typically have people taking the initiative to talk to me, I tend to just be in my own company, which I am very okay with. And sometimes I just even forget I'm in my own company because I always find something to do. And I'm not the type of girl who gets bored often, you know? So these meetings are usually like bi-weekly, but there's only been 3 so far. However, whenever I attend, it just pulls things out of me and pulls me out of that state, you know, like that antisocial state. Because even though I'm not as active as I want to be on the Discord, and I do struggle to keep lines of communication open, a lot of people on the Discord are so like-minded and feel so authentic and easy to talk to, which is like what's something I truly need at this point in my life. Okay, my learning experience of the week. Like I said, because I'm by myself a lot, I tend to be in my own head a lot. And this week I was pretty hard on myself. Not outright mean like I used to be, but just not in a good headspace. And I found myself just being hard about where I'm at in my health journey and about like my content creation revival. Because like I said, I put content creation on the side for school. I put my health on the side for school. And now that I graduated, it's like both of those things have been my top priority in every way it can be. I didn't realize how bad I was feeling this week until it kind of poured out when talking to someone who is extremely important to me. And I don't think when we're by ourselves, we realize how harsh we're being with ourselves. My key takeaways from that is to honor your emotions, because I thought I was good. I thought I was like happy because there wasn't anything for me to be necessarily unhappy about. Because for some people, they would call my life boring, and I would call my life peaceful, like no drama, because I don't socialize a lot. And honestly, I'm focused on doing the things that bring me joy. But because of that, it's like, how can I be unhappy? I mean, I'm doing the things I wanted. I'm at peace. I don't fight with anyone. Now that I'm home by myself, it's like, oh yeah, I should definitely be 100% happy because of how I spend my days. Like, this is like my dream life and I'm living it. But there are some constraints that make it hard, which is essentially the financial aspect. Because even though, yes, this is my dream life, to just be around the house and everything, I still need a source of income. And with content creation, it's not happening anytime soon. Well, I don't want to say that. I do think it could happen, but it's not going to happen overnight, which brings me to like my next key takeaway is the importance of patience. And I feel like I haven't been giving myself as much patience because at one point, especially during the pandemic, my accounts were at a high, and it was because I was at home and I was working at them all the time. And I also was like sharing it with my friends and they would share it with other people. But I just recently started to share again, and it's technically only been about a month, and I feel like I'm not happy where I am with creating, and I'm not happy where I am with my body. And it's like, if I take a step back, I feel like I would be able to see the changes I have made. But it's like, because it's me, it's sometimes hard to step back and really bring everything into perspective. And I do want to learn more how to do that because patience is so important with everything you want to do in your life. It doesn't matter if it's like a really personal goal. It doesn't matter if it's like a goal that involves other people. Patience is key. And I feel like I'm constantly learning and practicing patience. With that being said, about productivity and trying to create the life I want, the inspiration for this topic was the 12-week year. And I've personally first heard about it from Montel B, who is like a YouTuber. It was actually a productivity system developed by Brian P. Morin and Michael Lennington, which aims to help individuals and organizations achieve their goals in a more effective and efficient way. And the premise is really simple. So it's basically, instead of setting annual goals and trying to achieve them over the course of a full year, the 12-week year breaks it down into shorter time frames, 12 weeks, which is basically 3 months. So it's kind of like setting quarterly goals, but instead of thinking of it like, oh, it's just 3 months, you kind of think of those 12 weeks as being a year. So last year I found the video, and Montel B, a YouTuber, created a Notion template, and she also created a video explaining how the template works and everything. I personally did my own spin of things, which is what I want to talk about, starting with how I organized my own charts. So I'm probably going to just leave my blog post in the show notes, but basically where I started, the huge difference is how I described areas of life, which for me is personal development, health, financial, technological, environmental, social, beliefs, and recreational. I'm not going to speak too much on that because I dedicated an entire blog post talking about why understanding the areas of life is important. So I'm just going to drop that in the show notes because personally I think it's easier to read than hear. So once you listen through the podcast, you can check it out, and yeah. But something else that really helped me was I kind of like changed her template a lot, because one thing she did, it did feel overwhelming for me, was kind of like she had like her top 3 priorities, right? And then for each priority she had a strategy. like 3 strategies to make that thing work. And I do think that's a smart idea and a smart way to organize it and everything. There is also something very overwhelming about it for me. So, also, when she did the 12-week year, so some of the ways she categorized was like physical health, spiritual, habits and routine, career, relationship with partner, relationship with family and friends, finances, emotional state, society and community, overall energy, hobbies and new skills, travel and experience. To me, that felt like too much, so I simplified it in a way that I would understand, but also certain things I did separate. Like, for example, content creation is its own category for me because it is not necessarily a job, but it feels like one. But I would not call this a hobby anymore. Like, it's too important to me to just pick up and leave off, because I do think I have a tendency to not finish my hobbies and not go through with my hobbies. So I wanted this to be its own thing. So I don't call it a hobby anymore. And yeah. And then I think I also did something different with health, but I'm not sure. But the interesting part is how she like categorized each thing. She would rate them, have a current reality, vision in 1 year, priority, and rating. I think you should check out her video and her template where she explains like how it works, because one thing I did do is I did take it a step further, and I also wrote out like I wanted a column with like possible blockages for those goals, because I think it's important to remind ourselves like what is and what isn't in our control. But in the table, I also have like 7 things I can do to contribute to this goal, you know, or like things that I can do that's within my control. And I think that's like very important for me to remember about what's not in my control and what is, because I feel like I have the biggest tendency to beat myself up over about what's not in our control. That's like my addition to what she did. Another thing I did differently that kind of added to my own 12-week year and how I made the changes, and so far I think it's been about, well, we're in July, but July is not completely over, so I'm going to round it to 6 months, because I definitely can see certain changes in myself, but they're not like drastic changes, you know? But a lot of changes mostly in my mindset and kind of like how I see life and think about things, approach things, and even like my mannerisms, I guess. But something else I did was Word of the Year, which started back in 2020 for me, which was inspired from Alicia Marie and Remy Cruz, who spoke about it on their podcast called Pretty Basic. And I loved it because it set intention and the tone for the year. So my first word of the year was unapologetic in 2020. In 2021, it was progress, which is funny because I do think out of my most recent years, that was a year I made a lot of progress. In 2022, it was balance, and 2023, my focus is consistency. And I think with every word, I have been really intentional. This year, I took it a step further, and each month has a focus based on like my goal list or things I wanted to happen in 2023, whether it was like my health, my finances, stuff like that. So basically, January was health, February was creativity, March I wanted the focus to be academics, April was connections, May was reflection, and so on. And I would do small steps to work towards those goals slash intentions to focus on like the overall theme of the year, which is consistency. And I can explain that fully if you want, but since I am not the best on time, this is probably very long. So another thing that I did change for my 12-week year, and that really helped me in like my time, was like kind of like how I saw time. So for example, one thing I did was having like on periods and off periods, which essentially means like on periods to describe it was like the times I had to talk to people, had to socialize with them. I just was more required to do things in my day and have other people in my space, basically. Which, in a sense, I felt like that means I have to be, like, on, you know? But off periods, which includes, like, the time I sleep, but also, like, times that I don't have to necessarily talk to people, and that if I wanted to be more done for the day, I could. For example, I started turning off my phone or leaving my phone on the other side of the room at a very specific time, and I would not text people back. Because I do feel like if you don't show that you respect your time, other people are going to take advantage of your time. Because of course you want to be there for people. And of course, like, to be a good friend, you have to be there for your friends. But is that a subjective statement? Yes, because every friendship is different, and some friendships require a person to be more present, and other friendships, like, they're fine like talking every few months and it still feels the same. It's really dependent on the friendship and the people in the friendship, and they make their own friend rules. And I'm not saying one way is right and the other way is wrong, but it's just how it is. And I'm a person who, if you want to talk to me, I'm so happy for it, but I would appreciate if there are times like I can talk to you within a certain time frame, because I will listen and I will answer, I will respond faster, but sometimes, especially being an introvert, I need recharge time. And some people's off periods may include more people because they're extroverts, but that's not me, you know, and I've learned to be okay with that. And then another thing I started to do was like splitting up my day. So you know how like if something bad happens at one point in the day, you're like, oh my God, my day is ruined. Instead of being like that, it's like, if let's say the bad thing happens in the morning, right? Instead of saying, oh, I had such a bad day, it's so much easier and so much better, like, saying like, oh, I had such a bad morning or early morning, if it's like early morning and that was the problem. Or like if something happens in the afternoon, or even like the way you say like, oh, I did not do anything this morning, I didn't do anything all day. And it could feel like that. But if you split up your time, and like, for example, if the time early morning for you is like up until, I don't know, 8 o'clock, and you haven't done anything for like 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, 9 to 12, whatever, from 9 to 12 o'clock, you can like do small things and then feel like, oh yeah, I did this, and that during this time frame, and I had a good late morning, you know? So it's all about kind of reframing your thoughts. And yeah. So those were some of the things I did differently. But before I head into like the journal prompt of the podcast, because that's the last thing I always close off with, I want to say that changing your life, especially because we're in the middle of the year right now, I want people to know and to remember, if you want to change your life in 6 months, the 6 months is not about the drastic changes or reaching your end goals. It's about showing up for yourself and doing things you want to do to show up for yourself. Because it's hard to have such a drastic change at once. Like, let's say your goal was health and you started going to the gym. You're not going to get abs tomorrow. We expect drastic changes and for things to just happen and we can see the difference in our lives. I do think the 12-week year and doing that has shown me setting like the small intent in a time period does, like, it kind of does make you be like, oh yeah, I have to do this in this quarter period, because it's not months, it's a year. And even if those goals are like really ambitious and seems like so far out the realm, by having like the biggest dreams ever, you'll still work towards. And even if you don't necessarily hit them, you're still making progress. And maybe you'll hit that at the end of quote unquote the 40 years. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the real 365 days around the sun. So I just want that reminder, because I do think sometimes that's how we give up on our goals, because we're not seeing changes. And this is a reminder. And this is a reminder not just for you, but for myself, because like I said, that was like my own learning experience of the week, is to have patience. Patience with yourself, patience with your goals, and honestly, to most importantly, remind ourselves, like, the important thing is just showing up. And as long as you just show up for yourself, even if you don't always have the energy to do it at 100%, but even showing up at 25% is still showing up. Okay? And you may not want to hear that. You may want to hear like, oh, by changing your life in 6 months, like, you'll have the full effect of everything you want. But sometimes we realize through it, like, we're doing everything we want, or sometimes we get the things we want and we're still not satisfied. So take that with a grain of salt and just show it for yourself. I believe in you. I believe in your goals, and I do think you can get it. And I do support y'all being as delulu and romanticizing every single thing. But I'm not going to tell you to lower your dreams or lower your expectations. But know it can happen with time. And know that if it doesn't happen in the ideal time frame, that doesn't say anything about you, because I do think our time always comes. And the things that are meant to happen always do, even sometimes when we least expect it. So go for it. And for today's journal prompt or task of the week, what are some challenges you anticipate facing while working towards your 12-week goals? How can you overcome them? This question is basically personalized, my template to what Montel B created. So I think this is a great journal exercise. If you don't want to write, actually a good idea is maybe to do like a voice recording diary. So thank you so much for listening in. I hope the things I said made sense, because I feel like I did get off topic a few times, but I'm still doing my best to work towards really creating a space and what that means for me, because I know there are so many other podcasts. So I just want to make one that fits me, and hopefully I can find my community from it. So yeah, have a good day, evening, or night. We will catch up next week, and I am actually more excited for that episode because that was the episode that was supposed to happen today. So stay tuned and have a confident, lively summer. Bye.